بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على خير الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين محمد وآله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين. حضورنا الكريم، يسعدنا ضمن فعاليات مؤتمر الكويت للشراكة بين القطاعين العام والخاص أن نفتتح أولى جلسات المؤتمر بحلقة نقاشية بعنوان الدروس المستفادة من العمل بمشروعات الشراكة عالميا، ويديرها الدكتور خالد مهدي رئيس اللجنة العليا للمؤتمر. ندعو الدكتور خالد مهدي للصعود إلى المنصة، وكذلك سيشارك بهذه الجلسة الحوارية كل من الدكتور زياد-Alexandre حايك رئيس المنظمة العالمية لوحدات ومهنيي الشراكة بين القطاعين العام والخاص، نائب رئيس فريق عمل الأمم المتحدة للشراكة بين القطاعين العام والخاص، وكذلك المهندس عاطر عزت حنورة مدير الوحدة المركزية لمشروعات الشراكة وزارة المالية جمهورية مصر العربية. وندعو كذلك الدكتور أيوب فورال آيدين رئيس مجلس الإدارة مركز التميز لمشروعات الشراكة في إسطنبول الجمهورية التركية، والسيد مازن عصام حوا نائب رئيس مجلس الإدارة والرئيس التنفيذي للمجموعة شركة العقارات المتحدة. ويسرنا أيضا دعوة السيد وليد الشريعان الرئيس التنفيذي شركة المباني، فليتفضلوا إلى المنصة لافتتاح الجلسة النقاشية. تفضل دكتور خالد.
So let me start again. I would like first to thank you all for being part of the attendance to this session. To me, this is considered a very important panel discussion. The panelists are very well known in the area of public-private partnership. In this session, titled Lesson Learned from Global Implementation of Partnership Projects, it actually provides an insight of how the global arena, the international market is dealing with public-private partnership, how governments are also dealing with public-private partnership. We are very pleased to have His Excellency Dr. Ziad Hayek to be part of this panel. Thank you very much, Dr., for joining us. Engineer Atter Hannoura, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And we are so delighted to have Dr. Eyup AYDIN to join us in the panel, and Mr. Waleed to be part of the panel as well, and Mr. Mazen Hawwa. We enjoyed the opening remarks. Some of them are politically correct and some of them maybe not politically correct. And what I like about the opening remark, they are all share one important idea. This idea is we do believe in public-private partnership. The next thing is how do we implement public-private partnership, which is the what I call the concern I heard over and over from the private sector. So in this panel, we are trying to provide an insight of what is going on around the globe, what is going on the region, as well in Kuwait. Let me start with the rule of engagement in this panel. We will be doing 3 rounds, 5, 3, 1, 5 minutes each in the first round, 3 minutes in the second round, and 1 minute in the final round. And I appreciate every panelist to stick with the time for 2 reasons. One, so we don't get it to be boring for the audience. And I know private sector, they are time driven, so we have to take conscious of it. And the second thing is in order to have some time for the Q&A. Let me start with the first round, 5-minute response each of the panelists. Let me introduce His Excellency Mr. Ziad Hayek, is the President of the World Association of PPP Units and Professionals and former Vice Chair of the United Nations Working Party on PPP. He has extensive experience spanning 40 years in economic policy, international finance, and project financing. Previously, he served as Secretary General of Lebanon's High Council for Privatization and PPP, and held senior executive roles at Bear Stearns, Banque Indosi, I'm not good in Francais, and Citibank. Hayek studied international management at the University of Texas at Dallas. And by the way, he's fluent in 11 languages. He decided today to speak to us in English. My question to you, Your Excellency, given your extensive global experience, what common strategic errors do government frequently make the initiating PPPs? And how can Kuwait avoid these pitfalls? And what is the most effective governance structure you've observed globally for PPP project to ensure transparency and efficiency? We are very much intrigued with your opening remark. So this question is to continue your insight. Your Excellency. صوت يا جماعة.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khaled. Yes, I won't be long because I already had a chance and I want to leave my colleagues on the panel some time to talk. But to answer your question, I think first and foremost, as I said, empower the PPP unit. I have seen that the PPP units that are successful in the countries that are successful doing PPPs are the countries where the head of the PPP unit is appointed by the president or the prime minister and has their full trust. When it's a political appointee, typically there is more support than when it is just somebody within a ministry. And so typically countries that have succeeded in PPP have taken the PPP unit and placed it directly under the prime minister or directly under the president. Because it is a unit that needs to operate with many ministries, not with just one ministry, and not represent the point of view of one ministry. Ideally, we have not seen this happen in the world, but ideally the PPP unit would be a ministry by itself. The second thing is politicians should let the professionals work. They should not push them. Typically what we see is the political decision maker says, I want the airport in 6 months. And then the head of the PPP unit either says, I cannot do it in 6 months. And so the political person says, get out, I will change you. Or they say, okay, sir, I will do it in 6 months. And then after 6 months, it's not done. And then they say, you're out, I'm going to change you. So we see a lot of, in many countries, a lot of change of personnel in the PPP units. So it is very important for the politicians to realize that infrastructure takes time, that PPP takes time. Unlike normal EPC contracts, etc., it is not just a matter of, maybe I should clarify this for everybody. PPP is not a matter of only price. In normal public procurement, all the variables are fixed except the price is variable, and the bidding is on the basis of price. In PPP, all the variables are variable. And so you need to give time to the private sector to negotiate with the banks, to see how much, what kind of financing it can get, to give its input on the contract ahead of time, etc. And all of this takes a long time. So political decision makers need to realize that a PPP tender will take 9 months easily to be prepared and then launched. And the last thing I will say, there are many things to say, but I'm very conscious of the time that you have placed on us. The last thing I would say in terms of key for success is that the PPP unit should make sure it consults with everybody. A consultation is very important. I have seen entities do projects consulting with only one side, one ministry or one local administration or whatever, and eventually the project fails because there's no political consensus. The head of the PPP unit is first and foremost a political person. The head of the PPP unit is not a technical person. There are consultants. The head of the PPP unit should be a political person that knows how to lobby, how to champion projects, how to deal with parliament, how to deal with ministries. So I think this is the key for success.
Your Excellency, I have 1 minute with you now left and the 5, but I want you just to let us know what are the main pitfalls that you encounter through the public-private partnership internationally. So if you just pinpoint one pitfall or another, if you don't mind, which make the public-private partnership not just challenging, a failure.
It's all about championing something. You need the champion. If you don't have a champion, you will not succeed. Yeah. And one thing I will say, and I warn you here in Kuwait, sometimes what I say people don't like, but I have to say it. I have compared the PPP laws of other countries in Arabic language so that there is no language issue. The PPP laws of Egypt, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Lebanon, Tunisia, Morocco, they're about 3,000 words. The PPP law of Kuwait is 12,000 words. You have put together a PPP law that is very restrictive. You're imposing IPOs on companies. This is not going to work easily. You have to be very careful. You need to make a law that is flexible. That's my recommendation.
Thank you very much for being very straightforward in this issue. Engineer Atter.
Yes.
First, thanks for joining us. Atter Hannoura is the director of Egypt's PPP Central Unit at the Ministry of Finance, with over 42 years in engineering, procurement, and PPP project management. He has significantly contributed to Egypt's PPP legal framework. Hannoura previously worked with multinational organizations, including the World Bank, and led major PPP initiatives across utilities, transportation, health, and education sectors. He holds a degree in engineering from Alexandria University and law from Cairo University. Engineer Atter, it is always great to have an engineer and a lawyer at the same time.
Thank you.
You made you very dangerous in dealing with PPP. The question, based on Egypt's PPP journey, and in your 42 years of experience, you saw it all. What has been the single greatest policy adjustment that improved PPP implementation? And how do you recommend overcoming bureaucratic hurdles commonly faced in PPP projects based on Egypt's experience? Engineer Atter.
Thank you, sir. Actually, the answer to this question is capitalizing on the answer of the first question to Mr. Ziad, which was the pitfalls. So you have to address it and put the legislative framework and the procedures to overcome this, or actually to prevent these pitfalls from happening. And this was the major policy that we started with. Actually, we started the PP in 2006, and our law was issued 2010. So we experienced something like 2 or 3 years of practicing PPs, not under the current law. And this was a debate. Shall we put the law first and then start implementing? Or shall we start implementing and capture all the lessons learned and then put it in the law? And this was a debate, and actually we took the other way. We amended the procurement law to adapt some of the PP procedures, and then we started our first 3 projects. We captured all the lessons learned and actually all the pitfalls. And let me say that our first project failed completely. okay? And I'm not ashamed to say this because we learned a lot from it. And we've went through all the bureaucracy, especially in the financing, especially when the banks are involved, when there is a direct agreement or a sovereign guarantee required. There is a multi-entities in the government managing this with us. And accordingly, we understand what's PP. They don't. So the legal framework should, number one, allow them to do this kind of approvals and financing. Number two, put it in the procedures that would expedite things, okay? Because let me tell you, in the first project or the second project, let me say what was the very successful project, and we got something like 3 or 4 awards on it. During implementation, prior financial closure, the government has to sign off an approval to pledge the assets of the project to the banks. This, in the first project, took something like 9 months, 8 to 9 months, just to convince that this signing is not a crime. This is one of the procedures. And this was very clearly drafted in our law. All these problems that we faced, you have to save the signer who will be signing this, and to put it in a legitimate frame. So this is the flexibility in the law and how to amend and draft the laws. On the other hand, our law, which was issued in 2010, after practicing 2 or 3 projects, we practiced that, and we faced on this in the last 10, 15 years, another challenge that we couldn't predict. 2 revolutions, devaluation of the 3 devaluations of the issued currency, very high interest rate, very high inflation, pandemic, everything. We faced everything in this 3 point. And actually, we have to amend our laws. So we amended the laws, issued in 2021, and the executive regulation issued in 22. And actually, as we go, we will amend again. The PPP is a continuous learning project. It's a continuous learning process. You will never stop. Circumstances that will be facing you will never stop and will never be stagnant. It will keep on changing and changing and changing. Accordingly, we have to be very flexible. Restrictive laws, as Mr. Ziad just mentioned, will handcuff you, will stop you from creativity. PPPs is creativity, and you have to be very alert, very innovative, and capable to understand the private sector and the banks, because the private sector needs and visions and risk acceptance and risk appetite differs from time to time, and accordingly you have to capture this and see how to manipulate and restructure the project. And actually some of our projects were restructured while we're tendering, because we've seen from the private sector things that our consultants didn't see, or even us who were project we didn't see. So we have to be very responsive to the market and change as it is. Sorry for being too long.
Thank you very much, Engineer Atter. I want to move now to Dr. Eyup. Dr. Eyup is the chairman of Istanbul PPP Center for Excellence and leads Turkey's Foreign Economic Council PPP Committee. With over 20 years in public and private infrastructure development, Dr. AYDIN has advised numerous governments and institutions, including the World Bank, IFC, and various Turkish ministries. He specializes in PPP project structuring, financial management, and risk assessment, having contributed extensively to Turkey's national PPP framework. Thank you very much for being with us, Dr. Eyup.
My pleasure.
Now, we want to learn from your experience, and this is to me as another regional experience. We talked about Egypt, the framework, the importance of flexibility. As His Excellency also mentioned, the over-regulation sometimes is not hindering, but it is stop. It's a big pitfall and obstacle. Now we want to see what key lesson can Kuwait learn from Turkey's experience in managing risks associated with PPP projects.
Thank you, Doctor. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers and the CUP for, kind invitation, and it's really good to be here again. I have a presentation about Turkish PPP journey and lessons learned after the panel. So I will go over, 30 minutes, what are the risks, what we did so far, so such kind of. But I would like to mention something different about what is PPP, what is private finance, what is the involvement of private finance to the public services. So at the university, we are starting with the definition of PPP. But the first word we say, we don't have any definition, unanimity of PPP. It means that every organizations, every different, government, they are meaning to the PPP in a different way. So this is one. The second one is, when we are talking about the government experience, we should split in two ways. The first one is the developing economies, and the other one is developed. This is totally different than each other. In the Western countries, what are our, best experiences? Australia, Canada, some European, the UK. So the first PPP is 18th century. The modern contracts, 18th century. The needs are different. The resources are different. The financial structure of the global economy was totally different than today. Even 10 years ago, we cannot use the PPP and the private finance and the features like today. We had the financial crisis, we have a pandemic, the COVID-19, and till 2015, we have a sustainability issues from the Addis Ababa Action Agenda of the UN. So everything is changed. What is sustainability? How we can transform our infrastructure as a sustainable? What is the resiliency? What the financial associations and the IFIs are looking from the governments is totally different today. 10 years ago, you were asking Doctor to experience of Turkish PPPs. 10 years ago in Istanbul, the population is more than 20 millions and lots of needs. And when we asked to the people 10 years ago, what is the main needs of your daily routine life? Probably the answer was, we need more metro. Today, when we ask the same question to the society, they are asking Wi-Fi connection in the metro. So this is a public infrastructure change in 10 years. So I think we should change the approach. For example, mostly we should focus on agile governance. What is agile governance? How a government can be agile for the needs and the resources. And another example I would like to share, 2013, we had a tunnel project in Istanbul, Eurasia Tunnel. It was funded by European Investment Bank, approximately $250 million. And at that year, EIB invested 18 different infrastructure projects in different countries. One of them was Eurasia Tunnel. If the SPV and the government of Turkish government didn't do the right things for finding this finance from EIB, probably this $250 million should go another project. This is not the finance. This is not the proper funding. It's about that what we are doing as government. Is it the right things? Our projects is the right projects. Our projects are the bankable projects. So a global experience as well as a conclusion. There are lots of things to say, but in 5 minutes, I should filter the right things. One thing I would like to mention today, the most important failure of the governments is the optimism bias. I am emphasizing this is every time. What is optimism bias? It means that as government, I can do everything. Without a bankable project, without a feasibility project. And statistic I would like to share with you. In Africa, 80% of infrastructure projects cannot pass the preparation phase. 80%. So I think we are talking about blended finance today. So the government should finance in the feasibility phase, not the implementation phase.
Thank you very much, Dr. Eyup. You touched on a very important issue that we will maybe shed the light on it in the second round. And now with Mr. Waleed Shreyan. Waleed is the CEO of Mabanee, one of the Kuwait's leading real estate and investment companies. His extensive experience in investment strategy, real estate development, guide Mabanee involvement in major PPP projects. Al-Shreyan focuses on aligning private sector capabilities with government objectives, emphasizing efficient risk allocation and sustainable investment returns in Kuwait evolving PPP landscape. Mr. Waleed, from a private sector perspective, we moved from the international to regional, now we go to the local. From your private sector perspective, what are the most significant factor influencing investment decision in Kuwait PPP projects? And what is the current level of risk allocation between the public and private sector in Kuwait from a PPP framework? Mr. Waleed.
شكرا دكتور خالد. I think the size of the project is a factor. Type of projects, for example, we are real estate, we don't do hospitals, so any business related to our company related business, then that will attract us always. If it's profitable, as I always tell my investment team and my project team, private sector does not do museum. In the end of the day, it has to be profitable for the shareholders. So time or period of the project is a very important, essential to depreciate the whole project on that period. Risk, many risks. We're afraid of changing certain laws which affect the assumption that we initiated our feasibility on. Feasibility related on revenue, operational cost, and construction cost. If any of that changes during our operation, that really affects, that is a risk for us. Geopolitical, and it's always, it's a risk. I mean, oil prices is a risk. COVID was a big problem for most of the companies all over the world. So something like that is a risk. Interest rate is affecting us if it's became really high. So that type of risk. And local risk is when they change law, change the people who's responsible for the PPP project that might have a different vision than the other people. That's just, I'm trying to summarize the project.
Thank you very much, Mr. Waleed. Honestly, you gave a very long list of risks, and I have to admit, for the private sector to accommodate all the risk without understanding from the government, will be really a challenge. So let me move now to Mr. Mazen Hawwa. Mazen served as a vice chairman and group CEO of the United Real Estate Company, URC, with over 25 years of experience in real estate and financial services. Hawwa lead strategic initiative across URC subsidiaries. Prior roles include Deputy CEO at KIPCO Group, where he specialized in finance strategic operation. Hawwa holds an executive MBA from HEC Paris and completed Harvard Business School General Management Program. Let me continue our local perspective in the panel. As I said, we move from international to regional, now local. As a vice chairman and a group CEO, what criteria does URC prioritize when deciding to participate in a PPP opportunities?
Thank you, Dr. Mahdi. Sorry. So URC have been there for more than 50 years, and in the early days have contributed into major developments in the real estate landscape of Kuwait. In the early days, URC participated in some of the public-private, I don't want to call it PPP in particular, because that's a specific law, but other forms of public partnership through the previous BOT laws or contracts. In URC experience, of course, it was a true partnership with the objective of covering the needs of the society or the ecosystem at the time. And in particular, some projects were in the public parkings and the commercial centers that were attached with it, such as Masil, Muttahida, and some other similar projects. In these projects, no doubt, as a private sector, financial discipline is a key element. And having a viable, financially feasible project is essential. But nonetheless, that's not the only criteria. It's also the socioeconomic element, and the success of a project is in its sustainability. So the other elements that come into play are basically the quality of the development, the sustainability of the property, its operational efficiency in order to provide the targeted returns, and of course the return on capital, which is essential to create the value to our shareholders, and at the same time to meet our project finance requirements. So yes, the financial element is essential, but more importantly, it's as Mr. Waleed mentioned, my colleague, he mentioned the time frame, the flexibility of the laws, or in other words, the stability of the regulatory frameworks that are applied in these contracts and in these relationships. But more importantly, it's whether we develop a property that can live for the time frame that we've contracted for and beyond. And hence the maximization of return to ultimately the shareholders and the public is basically a true element. And I would like to mention that, yes, we say PPP, public, and the public means the government is basically addressing the needs, and the private is the party that is closer to the community, closer to the retail, closer to the business partners, and hence our partnership is strengthened through our shared knowledge in terms of what the government, or basically the regulator, needs to provide, and what we understand from our customers is needed from the people perspective.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mazen. Let me just move now to the second round of question. I just remind our panelists that you have a 3-minute max to answer the question. Your Excellency, there are a lot of interesting points being said in the first round. Now we want to move now to talk about stakeholder. And my question to Your Excellency, what role does stakeholder engagement play in the success or failure of PPPs at the international arena?
Everything.
Yes.
Everything. And there are many stakeholders. So the government is a stakeholder. Ministry of Finance is a stakeholder. The ministry where the project is being done is a stakeholder. The PPP unit is a stakeholder. The consultants are stakeholders. The people who are, the project is destined for, the users are the stakeholders. Our environment is a stakeholder. So it is very, very difficult. probably the most difficult job in our profession is to be the head of the PPP unit. Because the head of the PPP unit has to deal with all these stakeholders. And the projects have to deal with all the stakeholders. So I will shift a little bit to say that the head of the PPP unit, and I said, has to be political, but I don't mean politician. I mean, know how to be a political animal, if you like. Has to deal with politicians, has to deal with investors. They need to know how to manage the investors. They need to, and every project has a different technical thing. One day you're working on a toll road, the next day you're working on a solar power project. Technical flexibility, need to understand financing and all the issues that are related to capital structure and all of that. Need to understand legal matters and contracts and PPP policy and how to identify projects and how to prioritize them and how to design them and how to tender them, the whole process of public procurement, and then how to manage a project. And stakeholders are everywhere in all these phases, So that's why it is very important to give the PPP unit a lot of flexibility, a lot of leeway. And the government should be conscious of that. COVID taught us this lesson. The projects that were able to continue through COVID are where governments were willing to be accommodating to the private sector and not really go by the strict language of the law. It is a partnership. I go back to saying it's a two-way partnership. And that's why at WAP we are very insisting on mediation, for example, because yes, you can go to arbitration. Yes, you can go to laws, but try mediation first. Try the partnership approach.
Thank you very much. Honestly, I like your answer, everybody. And then let me add to it, even our families at home. That's also part of the stakeholder, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, Engineer Atter, my question regarding measures, have you found most effective in attracting international investors to PPP projects in Egypt?
Look, attracting private sector or international advisors, international investors have more than one direction. Number one, they are after real, transparent procurement. This is one of the important things. Sometimes in some countries that I've been working with, they say that we'll give some incentives, we'll give them some exemption from taxes, exemption from so and so, and still the procurement is not that transparent. They will not come. They are after real, transparent procurement procedures. Number two is very important, is to have a real pipeline with scheduled. We will be tendering this after 1 year, this after 2 years, and all. Private sector is very attracted not to a project in the country, because when they mobilize to a country, they want to stay there. Given that the PP projects are long-term projects, so he will be engaged with this country for 20 or 25 years or 30 years or more, so he wants to build the base there. So a real attraction is to tell him that we have 7 projects to come in the next 2 years in the desalination, on the transportation, on the health. So he will come. If he didn't get the first one, he will be working on the second and the third. And if he get one of the contracts, he will be eager to get the second. And this is actually better competition, better pricing, and more professional technical. So these are 2 important things. The third thing is in the implementation side. Who is his counterpart? And this is, I want to give you a very short story of ours. When we started tendering the PPs in the first 5-6 years, we found a Japanese company, 3 Japanese companies buying, getting qualified. They procure the tender document and they bombard us with a lot of questions and interactions. And at the time of bid submission, they don't submit. For the first and the second project, and in the third project, I called the Japanese embassy and I told them I will black mark these three companies because they are exhausting us and they are not that serious. Unless they give me a real justification. I just wanted to understand from where I'm doing this, Japanese guys are not playing around. Okay, so there's something in their head. I want to know it. So I started very hard. I will black mark them. They will not be tendering to us again. I said, then we called for a meeting in his office, in the embassy, and I told him I was very tough. Why? They gave me a very straightforward, simple question. We are getting engaged with your government for the next 25 years. We'd like to know what you are doing. Do you understand PPs or not? We will be dealing with you and your team. Do you understand that the country is geared for PPs or just a new trend? Is the directions for PPs or not? Do you understand what you're doing or not? So, I told them, right, after all this 2 or 3 years examining us, now you can participate. And actually they started participating and they were very good in competition. But the issue is that private sector is not a matter of tendering and signing a contract. It starts after signing the contract. It starts for the next 25 years, where the problems will happen, where the problems requires a full understanding of the contract and how can we overcome all these kind of obstacles. In other words, how can we well manage the contracts from both sides. So the counterpart is very important.
Thank you very much, Engineer Atter. This is very interesting. So the private sector is testing the government at the end of the day, isn't it?
Definitely, because they'll be working with us.
Dr. Eyup, how has Turkey navigated financial market fluctuation to ensure stable PPP project finance? I would like to know your view on this.
This is a very challenging question for Turkish markets because, you know, we have a very huge variation about the hard currency last 10 years. So it's broke the all, you know, feasible studies for the government as well because it's multiplied 3, 4, and 5 when the government made the feasible studies for the infrastructure projects. But I think, yeah, this is about the government guarantees in Turkey. So it means that how the government stands back to the projects. This is very important because, you know, PPP is just a model and the government is standing back to its infrastructure projects and never finalize with 1 project or 2 projects your pipeline. So the Turkish government believes in the private finance. In the future, they would like to improve more and more infrastructure projects. So you cannot leave the private sector alone during such kind of crisis, especially for macroeconomic indicators. Let's give an example. It was 2015, $1 was only 10 Turkish lira. Today, it's around 40. Just 10 years, multiply 4. So the government still is paying the guarantees for the tunnels, bridges, and the hospitals as well. It means that I am eager to work with the private finance because unless Turkish government didn't go through PPP, it means that the government cannot finalize infrastructure, airports, ports, hospitals, bridges. And during the opening speech, there was a very important point I think His Excellency mentioned. With PPP, we are not, you know, making hospital buildings or educational buildings or highway or tunnel or bridges. We are improving, we are delivering public services. It means not hospital, but healthcare system. Not school buildings, but educational system. Not highway, but connectivity, mobility. Not the connection the connectivity of the people, trades, and goods. So the PPP should focus on the services, not the assets. Assets just are there over there. We need the people, they use it. We need to increase our economic growth. So it means like a transformational PP project. So the financial challenges, as private sector mentioned, always we have some financial problems, challenges against the improvement. But how you stand as government? One word, last word, your question to our President Ziad, it's very important about the governance. I think policy makers, politicians, governors, managers, technical, all we can fail. Experts, expertise, all we can fail. One thing cannot fail in partnership, it's collective intelligence. So I think we should find the collective intelligence during all our project cycle.
Maybe we'll be ending up with AI doing this for us.
Another big challenging question.
Another challenge. So, Mr. Waleed, what specific role should Kuwaiti government play in enhancing private sector trust and involvement? Mr. Waleed.
To be fair and flexible. This is number one. Number two. And easy on regulations. And the private sector is coming to be as a partner. And most of the RFPs or the clause in the contract is coming very harsh. And the government always the upper hand. It's like dealing with the private sector like a kid. And that has to change to be flexible little bit. And sometimes also part of different sectors of the government, which we faced actually for some of our projects, we did not receive the site from the municipality. And the clock is ticking, and we were in a problem between two different sectors, the government sectors. And that has to be corrected or adjusted, let's say. There is many different issues related to that. For example, electricity. The project's finished. The electricity at site is not ready. So we have achieved our milestone, but also with a certain entity of a government, like POW, said, you have to operate it. I said, I don't have electricity. So these kind of things that we think has to be flexible from the government. So that is a major thing, the government. And the government has to open the country for visitors. That is an essential, actually.
Thank you very much, Mr.
I'm trying to be frank, huh? I'm trying to be frank.
Well, this is politically incorrect, but I love it. Thank you very much, my dear, for very frank answer and honest. Honestly, if we want to move things forward, we have to be honest and frank to get them done. Mr. Mazen, what strategic changes would significantly enhance feasibility of large-scale PPP projects in Kuwait, from your perspective?
Thank you. I think Her Excellency in her speech, she set the tone. She said transparency and trust between public and private would lead to a sustainable relationship, as Mr. Waleed said, and he's being very straightforward in terms of highlighting the challenges that we sometimes face. We face similar challenge in a new project. We were given the site, but actually there is actually overlap in terms of certain governmental services on the land. So effectively we can't start the development until we sort out these challenges. I believe that the strategic elements for a successful PPP framework or relationship stems from basically proper planning and coordination among all governmental players, and the early engagement with the private sector and the players based on their expertise and based on their also strategic fit and advantages they bring into the projects. And hence the collective intelligence, or what I described earlier as basically the shared experiences. The direction is clear in terms of where the government. Probably we had a bigger problem. Yeah. Okay, so we're back. Thank you. So I was saying that the early engagement of the private sector will create an advantage and will set the roadmap for the knowledge sharing to reach into a successful project. And basically flexibility, fairness in treatment are also, and basically flexibility in design. Sometimes you can design beautiful property, but it's not operationally feasible. Or basically it doesn't address the needs of the citizens. As private sector players, when we make investments, we focus on understanding the needs of the customer and making sure that we are providing the value propositions that are needed. And accordingly, the engagement with the private sector on planning, project planning or project roadmaps will provide a successful advantage.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mazen. Now I will move to round 3. It is 1 minute response. We call it rapid fire. My first question to Your Excellency, if you could give Kuwait one immediate actionable PPP recommendation, and we are very delighted to have Her Excellency Ismail Musa here. We would like to hear from you one actionable PPP recommendation. What would it be?
You have 12 projects in the pipeline. My recommendation is meet with the private sector, as Mr. Hawwa is saying, prioritize them, focus, 1, 2, 3. Trying to do a lot at the same time is difficult. So prioritize.
Then we should be expecting a workshop. She mentioned this in the opening remark. Engineer Atter, in 1 minute, what single initiative most improved PPP outcome in Egypt?
Actually, what improved the PPPs in Egypt was the political support and the understanding of the government at all levels that the PP is the real vehicle for project these days. So this was actually made a paradigm shift in the performance of the PPs in Egypt, plus the balanced contracts that the private sector actually.
Wonderful. Dr. Eyup, what critical success factor should Kuwait prioritize immediately to improve its PPP? In 1 minute.
The critical factor is, I think, for the successful PPP projects as an outcome, is the feasibility studies, right projects, bankable projects, people-first projects, interacting with all stakeholders. And I think as the experts who are shaping the project structure, policymakers, we need more voices not the noises.
Nice. Mr. Waleed, in one word, what should Kuwait focus on to attract more PPP investment? In 1 minute.
Be flexible. Be flexible.
To be flexible. That's
Just
good.
1 second.
This is very clear. Mr. Mazen, in 1 minute, what quick regulatory adjustment could immediately boost PPP participation in Kuwait from real estate companies' perspective?
I will stick to the real estate companies, not the utilities.
Only the real estate.
Not the utilities, assuming that the same PP law will be applicable to real estate developers, basically increasing our stake rather than sticking to 26%, allowing us to have control in order to drive the decision and make sure that we deliver the promise and the product that the customers want.
Thank you very much. Please, audience, let's applause our panelists for being on time and all the nice information. We have a very nice discussion. It's a very, let me put it in a way, very intriguing. And there are a lot of very nice, honest and frank points being stated. We enjoy the views of everyone of the panelists, and we can take 2 questions only from the floor. Only 2 questions, please. And please state the question, not a commentary, because if it's a comment, I will stop you. I'm really sorry. I need a question, a clear question. Please say. It's a very hot discussion. The sound system is being collapsing.
Thank you.
Please. Yes, sir.
I like to say that my question is not the offset program, but the PP out. And if there are any priorities, if there is an offset program that the loan that allow certain programs to be executed.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. The second question, please.
My question is to Ziad. When we go to the direction having this project funded as a PPP, if the project mainly how does the infrastructure that does not require know-how, technical know-how of the private sector. For example, the government of Kuwait, with a low general aid and high credit rating, go and fund jobs for Kuwait as a PPP or do it as a PPP.
Okay, we have 2 questions here from the floor. Thank you very much. And I would like to forward them to our panelists. The first one with regarding to getting the offset as a part of the public-private partnership, and we'd like to hear a view from the panelists. And one question directly to His Excellency. Let me start with you, and we move to you. Start.
Okay, I'll answer that question. Thank you for the question. It's very important. PPP started in the modern terminology in the UK, which is really called Public Finance Initiative, PFI, which today we call Government Pays You PPP, as opposed to concessions where it is, we call it today User Pays PPP. And both have their place in the in a government's, let's say, toolbox. But in general, it would be ideal for PPP to be a user-pays PPP, because to say that the government pays is always a question of comparing the cost of funds for the government versus the cost of funds of the private sector, which the debt costs more, the equity costs even more. So the weighted average cost of capital is tremendous. And the way to justify that is to say that the private sector brings certain advantages and is taking on some risks. And then the question becomes, what advantages and how to value the risks and all of that. I think, this is a personal opinion, I think if a government wants a school, they should just build a school. But if they want education, as Dr. Eyup was saying, they should get the private sector. Because it's more important, the private sector in a school is, how they're dealing with the technology infrastructure in the school, how they are, what is their system of education, how are they providing the standard curriculum plus. This is where the private sector can play a role much more than, building a school. That would be better done on an EPC contract. But I'm not saying that that should always be the case. I'm just saying that it is preferable for the government, for the government to look after the services, as Dr. Eyup was saying, rather than the infrastructure, just the infrastructure.
For the question regarding the offset project, the PPP, actually, the domain of the PPP projects, at least in Egypt, is the infrastructure, public utilities, and public services. So this is the domain. It's actually the project that the government should deliver by itself. It's given to the private sector either under the government pay structure or the user pay structure, as Mr. Ziad just. It's very important to understand that not all the projects could be structured and tendered under the PPs, under PP structure. So there's a criteria and there's a screening mechanism to differentiate from the potential PP projects that could be tendered and structured under the PP and attractive to the private sector and bankable, as Ray just mentioned, than the other projects that the government would be much more better, much more cheaper in delivering this project. So not all the projects could be PP projects, even if it falls under the infrastructure of public utilities or public services. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Atter. I would like to conclude the session. It was a very interesting session with a lot of takeaways, honestly. We actually, in this panel, examined the international, the regional, and the local perspective of public-private partnership. There are a lot that being said, which actually require government intervention to improve its public-private partnership approach. Thank you very much. Another applause to our speakers, and thank you for being a courageous audience. I can see the hall is full of listeners because they are very much interested in the topic. Thank you very much.
كانوا بيدير تقال خلي الشباب موجودين عشان كثير. تفضل استاذ اسلام مسندي عمليه مشروع الشباب يرضي بالقاعدين الخاص وبالنسبه للسلمان والاستشاريه الهندسيه والدور والاستشاريه الحقوقيه لتمكين المتعددين في الحلقه المستفاده من العمل في مشروعات الشباب العالميه لاستخدام كل المتعددين. بالبدايه تكريم الدكتور زياد-Alexandre رئيس المنظمه العالميه للوكالات المهنيه شبكه بين القطاعين العام والخاص، نائب رئيس فريق عمل الامم المتحده للشبكه بين القطاعين العام والخاص. وايضا تكريم المهندس
المهندس آخر عزت هنورة مدير الوحدة المركزية لمشروعات الشراكة وزارة المالية لجمهورية الاستقلال العربية. تكريم الدكتور أيوب فورال أيدين رئيس مجلس الإدارة مركز التميز لمشروعات الشراكة في إسطنبول الجمهورية التركية. تكريم السيد مازن عصام حوة نائب رئيس مجلس الإدارة